this intro because I decided I'm going to wrap up all 4 months. So this is going to be my wrap up from June through September. I'm doing it in my car because I'm killing two birds with one stone. You know, I'm driving home from work, and then there's daylight, which is great because daylight ends earlier now, so there's not a lot of time to film.
And I'm going to start in the order that I completed the book. So in the month of June, I finished 3 books, the first of which was Allegedly by Tiffany G. Jackson. I gave this book a 3 out of 5 stars. That being said, the book up until like the last 2 chapters to like 20 pages was phenomenal. I was prepared to give it a 5 out of 5 stars. It's about a girl who was accused and convicted of murder when she was 9, and it's now following her as she's out on parole. I read Cress and gave it 4 stars. This is the 3rd book in the Lunar Chronicle series. I think this is my favorite out of the ones I've read so far. I really liked the politics and the science in this. If you want to read the series, the first one is Cinder, and you do need to read them in order. The next book I read was a kind of like a novella. It's Ferris by Marissa Meyer. And I have started Winter. I just got it back from the library because it was due back before I finished it. And I will say I'm glad I read Ferris before going into Winter because it explains a little bit about the Queen's back set, a little bit about some of the things that happened in Cress, and it also introduces you to Winter as a character, which you really don't get from Cress or any of the other books. So I would recommend it if you're going to read on to Winter. I did give it 3 stars, but I enjoyed it. The books I read in July. So the first one I read in July was Every Heart is Darway by Shauna McGuire. This was 5 out of 5 stars. It's a bit of a murder mystery following these kids who have returned to our world from their portal worlds, and they are longing to go back to their portal worlds. It was spectacularly well done. There was so much plot and character growth in just 200 pages. I don't know how she did it. Questions I had, she would answer on the very next page. It was a delight to read, and there's a lot of diverse representation, but the diverse representation isn't, it's not a plot device. It's just part of who the characters are, which I feel like is important, and we don't really see that a lot in diverse books, like in general. The next 3 books were rereads for me. I read Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone and Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, all in the illustrated versions. Love them. Obviously, it was really nice to reread them. And then I read Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And upon my rereads, I appreciate the Chamber of Secrets and Prisoner of Azkaban more than I did. I think these 2 were maybe some of my least favorites in the series, although they were both still 5 out of 5 for me. The next book I had an advanced reader's copy of, and it is I Don't Like Reading by Elizabeth Clark. I gave this book 3 stars. I'll go into more in depth in my review, but it's about a dyslexic boy learning that he has dyslexia and then learning some of the coping skills. I think it's a great teaching tool in the classroom for students who have a classmate who is dyslexic. I, however, do not feel like, as somebody who is dyslexic myself, the reading experience was great because she did this aspect with the pictures and the text and the font of the words, which for those of you who aren't dyslexic plays a huge role in how bad the reading can be. Certain fonts are even worse than others, and how this all came together made it very difficult for me to read, just physically reading. And so I don't really get how you expect a dyslexic kid to read this when they're just now refining their, compensation for their learning disability. So that's why I knocked it down. Okay, and the next book I read was Flame in the Mist by Renee Audier. I read this as part of the biennial bibliothon and the booktube-a-thon. This is the worst book I've read all year, hands down. Like, easily worst book I've read, and it's the worst book I've read in a long time. I gave it 1 star. It was awful. I'll have a review of this up later because I despised it that much. It was awful. The main character was whiny. She was arrogant. She was a brat. The author did a lot of telling without showing, and then when she did show, it really didn't make sense. The book itself didn't make sense. It was awful. I really was. There were portions of it, like, I enjoyed slightly, like, some of, like, the Black Clan stuff, but, like, it wasn't enough for me. Like, I wouldn't have completed it, to be honest, if it wasn't that I wanted to participate in the live show. As a viewer of the live show, I was not, like, actually in the live show, but it was bad. I do not recommend this to anyone. I don't just blame the author, I blame the editor and the publishing company, because I feel like the concept of the book was good. The book, however, was about 200 pages longer than it needed to be because nothing happened at the beginning. So, and the writing style of this particular book was just, it was bad. I do kind of want to read her Wrath in the Dawn series, but then I've also heard that some of the things that I didn't like in this one kind of is also part of that. So maybe I just don't enjoy her writing style, like, in general, but I'm not willing to, like, say that with only reading one book. Okay, the next book I have a trouble with rating because it is The Raven Boys by Maggie Stiefvater. I was reading this in the Booktubeathon and the Biannual Bibliothon, and I feel like this is a book that you need to read a little bit slower based on the writing style. I felt like I was very confused throughout, and I feel like if I reread it, I would enjoy it more. And I do want to reread it. There was enough at the end that I'm like, okay, I must have missed a bunch, so I need to reread it. So I'm waiting for it to come back from the library so I can do that. But I ended up giving this 2 stars. The next book I read is The Raqqa Diaries, Escape from an Islamic State. It is kind of a autobiographical memoir kind of experience of somebody who lived in the capital of the Islamic State in Syria and about the Syria civil war. And this book was 5 stars. I recommend it to everyone. I was very angry after finishing it because after seeing what these people are going through, it really makes you think, why is my government not really doing much about it? Why is the world leaders in general turned a blind eye on what they have done? As a whole, is impacted the Syrian people negatively and not positively. It also goes into, I think it does a lot to dispel Islamophobia because they're talking about how the leaders of this Islamic State, while they claim the law of Islam, really and truly they're not following the religion. Hopefully have an in-depth review of this stuff, although I don't really know if I can do it justice. I do have a Goodreads review of every book that I've talked about today, so if you check out my Goodreads, you can read my more immediate thoughts when I had finished the book. I finished of the month was also an amazing read. I gave it 5 stars. It's The Inexplicable Logic of My Life by Benjamin Hilary Sands. This is a very character-driven novel. If you need a lot of plot, you might not like this. Classified as an LGBT romance, and it is not. It has an LGBT romance in it, but the book itself is not about the romance. It is YA, but I feel like if you're somebody who says, oh, I don't like YA, give this a try because it is written stylistically kind of similar to like literary genre fiction. And it goes into, you know, how we deal about grief and how life isn't black and white and how decisions aren't necessarily right and wrong. Like, there's this big gray area and how you're not always going to know the answer to all of your questions. You're not always going to understand how life works or why people do things. And it was just amazing. So I had a great June and July, especially July, thanks to the 2 readathons.
So in August and September, and I don't know which month I read which books, but I finished my reread of the Harry Potter series. So I reread Harry Potter and the Goblet of Fire, Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince, and Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. I'm not going to review them because they're obviously like Harry Potter. I mean, what other rating could you give it than a 5 out of 5? I still think Half-Blood Prince is my favorite. favorite of the whole series. But I did enjoy my reread, and that's basically what I read from June to September. So I'll see you later. Bye, y'all.